what we think we understand, where we came from, what we think we're doing, the more you begin to see we've been lied to. We've been lied to by every institution. What makes you think for 1 minute that the religious institution is the only one that's never been touched? The religious institutions in this world are put there by the same people who gave you your government, your corrupt education, who set up your international banking cartels. We have been misled away from the true and divine presence in the universe that men have called God. I don't know what God is, but I know what He isn't. And unless and until you are prepared to look at the whole truth, wherever it may go, whoever it may lead to, the more you educate yourself, the more you understand where things come from, the more obvious things become, and you begin to see lies everywhere. You have to know the truth and see the truth, and the truth will set you free.
When it comes to bullshit, big time, major league bullshit, you have to stand in awe of the all-time champion of false promises and exaggerated claims, religion. Think about it. Religion has actually convinced people that there's an invisible man living in the sky who watches everything you do every minute of every day. And the invisible man has a special list of 10 things he does not look and burning and torture and anguish, but he will send you to live and suffer and burn and choke and scream and cry forever and ever till the end of time. But he loves you. He needs money. He always needs money. He's all powerful, all perfect, all knowing, and all wise. Somehow, believes shit. This is the sun. As far back as 10,000 BC, history is abundant with carvings and writings reflecting people's respect and adoration for this object. And it is simple to understand why, as every morning the sun will rise, bringing vision, warmth, and security, saving man from the cold, blind, predator-filled darkness of night. Without it, the cultures understood the crops would not grow, and life and anticipate events which occurred over long periods of time, such as eclipses and full moons. This is the cross of the zodiac, when it objectively passes through the 12 major constellations and equinoxes. The term zodiac, in other words, the early civilizations did not just follow the sun and stars, they personified them with elaborate myths involving their movements and relationships. The sun, with its life-giving and saving qualities, was personified as the representative of the unseen creator or God, and is represented places of travel for God's sun, and were identified by names, usually representing elements of nature that happened during that period of time. For example, Aquarius, the water bearer, who brings the spring rains. This is Horus. He is the sun god of Egypt around 3000 BC. He is the sun anthropomorphized in his life is a series of allegorical myths about the soul Messiah. For instance, Horus, being the sun over light, had an enemy known as Set. The set was the personification of the darkness or night set, while in the evening the set would conquer for us and send him into the underworld. It is important to note that dark versus light, or good versus evil, is one of the most ubiquitous mythological dualities ever known, and is still expressed on many levels to this day. Broadly speaking, the story of Horus is as follows. Horus was born on December 25th of the Virgin Isis Mary. His birth was accompanied by a star in the east, and upon his birth he was adored by 3 kings. At the age of 12, he was a prodigal child teacher in a one. Horus was known by many gestural names such as the Truth, the Light, God's Anointed Son, the Good Shepherd, the Lamb of God, and many others. After being betrayed by Typhon, Horus was crucified, buried for 3 days, and thus resurrected. Many other gods are found to have the same general mythological structure. Attis of Phrygia, born of the Virgin Nana on December 25th, crucified, placed in a tomb, and after 3 days was resurrected. Krishna of India, born of the Virgin Devaki with a star in the east signaling his coming. He performed miracles with his disciples, and upon his death was resurrected. Dionysius of Greece, born of a virgin on December 25th, was a traveling teacher who performed miracles such as turning water into wine. He was referred to as the King of Kings, God's only begotten Son, the Alpha and Omega, and many others. And upon his death, he was resurrected. Mithra of Persia, born of a virgin on December 25th. He had 12 disciples and performed miracles, and upon his death was buried for 3 days and thus resurrected. He was also referred to as the Truth, the Light, and many others. Interestingly, the sacred day of worship of Mithra was Sunday. The fact of the matter is, there are numerous saviors from different periods from all over the world which subscribe to these general characteristics. The question remains, why these attributes of resurrection? Why 12 disciples or followers? To find out, let's examine the most recent of the solar messiahs. Jesus Christ was born of the Virgin Mary on December 25th in Bethlehem. His birth was announced by a star in the east, which 3 kings and magi followed to locate and adorn the new Savior, God, the light of the world, the Alpha and Omega, the Lamb of God, and many, many others. After being betrayed by his disciple Judas and sold for 30 pieces of silver, he was crucified, placed in the tomb, and after 3 days was resurrected and ascended into heaven. First of all, the birth sequence is completely night sky, which on December 24th aligns with the 3 brightest stars in Orion's belt. These 3 bright stars in Orion's belt are called today what they were called in HR, Sirius, all point to the place of the sunrise on December 25th. This is why the 3 kings follow the star in the east in order to locate the sunrise, the birth of the sun. It means virgin. Virgo is also referred to as the house of bread, and the representation wheat represents August and September, the time of harvest. In turn, Bethlehem, in fact, literally translates to house of bread. Bethlehem is thus a reference to the constellation Virgo, a place in the sky, or winter solstice. From the summer solstice to the winter solstice, the days become shorter and colder. And from the perspective of death to the ancients, it was the death of the sun. And by December 22nd, the sun's demise was fully realized. For the sun, having moved south continually for 6 months, makes it to its lowest point in the sky. Here a curious thing occurs. The sun stops moving south, at least perceivably, for 3 days, cross, or the crux constellation. And after this time, foreshadowing longer days, warmth, and spring. And thus it was said, the sun died on the cross, was dead for 3 days, only to be resurrected or born again. But this is why Jesus and numerous other sun gods share the crucifixion, 3-day death, and resurrection concept. It is the sun's transition period before it shifts its direction back into the northern hemisphere, bringing spring and thus salvation. However, they did not celebrate the resurrection of the sun until the spring equinox, or Easter. This is because at the spring equinox, the sun officially shines in the night. and the revitalizing conditions of spring emerge. Now, probably the most obvious of all the astrological symbolism around Jesus regards the 12 disciples. They are simply the 12 constellations of the zodiac, which Jesus, being the sun, is replete throughout the Bible. Coming back to the cross of the zodiac, the figurative light of the sun, this was not just an artisticus. This is why Jesus in early occult art is always shown with his head on the cross, for Jesus is the Son of God, the light of the world, the risen Savior, who defends against the works of darkness as he is born again every morning and can be seen coming in the clouds up in heaven with his crown of thorns or sun rays. Now, of the many astrological in order to understand this, we need to be familiar with the phenomenon known as the precession of the equinoxes. The ancient Egyptians, along with cultures long before them, recognized that approximately every 2150 years, the sunrise in the morning of the spring equinox would occur at a different sign of the zodiac. This has to do with a slow, angular wobble that the Earth maintains as it rotates on its axis. It is called a precession because the constellations go backwards rather than through the normal yearly cycle. The amount of time it takes for the precession to go through all 12 signs is roughly 25,765 years. This is also called the Great Year. And ancient societies were very aware of this, and they referred to each 2150-year period as an age. From 4300 BC to 2150 BC, it was the age of Taurus, the bull. From 2150 BC to 1 AD, it was the age of Aries, the ram. And from 1 AD to 2150 AD, it is the age of Pisces, the age we are still in to this day. And in and around 2150, we will enter a new age, the age of Aquarius. Now, the Bible reflects, broadly speaking, a symbolic movement through 3 ages while foreshadowing a 4th. In the Old Testament, when Moses comes down Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments, he's very upset to see his people worshiping a golden bull calf. In fact, he shattered the stone tablets and instructed his people to kill each other in order to purify themselves. Most biblical scholars, and Moses represents the new age of Aries the ram. This is why Jews even today still blow the ram's horn. Moses represents the new age of Aries. And upon the new age, everyone must shed the old age, preaching God who kills the bull in the same symbology. Now Jesus is the figure who ushers in the age following Aries, the age of Pisces, or the 2 fish. Fish symbolism is very abundant in the New Testament. Jesus feeds 5,000 people with bread and 2 fish. When he begins his ministry walking along Galilee, he befriends 2 fishermen who follow him. And I think we all seen the Jesus fish on the back of people's cars. Little do they know what it actually means. Age of Pisces. At Luke 22:10, when Jesus is asked by his disciples where the last Passover would be, Jesus replies, "Behold, when ye are entered into the city, there shall a man meet you, bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house where he entereth in. The man bearing the pitcher of water is Aquarius, the water bearer, who is always pictured as a man pouring out the Pisces, Jesus, who will go into the house of Aquarius, as Aquarius follows Pisces in the precession of the equinoxes. All Jesus is saying is that after the age of Pisces will come the age of Aquarius." Now, we have all heard about the end times and the end of the world. The cartoonish depictions in the book of Revelation aside, the main source of this idea comes from Matthew 28. However, in the King James Version, world is a mistranslation, among many mistranslations. The actual word being used even to the end of the age, which is true. as Jesus' solar Piscean personification will end when the sun enters the age of Aquarius. The entire Let's tell that to the approximately 100 million people in America who believe the end of the world is coming. Furthermore, the character of Jesus being a literary and astrological hybrid is most explicitly a plagiarization of the Egyptian sun god Horus. For example, inscribed about 3,500 years ago on the walls of the temple in the adoration of Horus. The images begin with Thoth announcing to the Virgin Isis that she would conceive Horus. Then this is exactly the story of Jesus' miracle conception. In fact, the literary similarities between the Egyptian religion and the Christian religion are staggering. And the plagiarism is continuous. The story of Noah and Noah's Ark is taken directly from tradition. The concept of the Great Flood is ubiquitous throughout the ancient world, with over 200 claims in different periods and times. However, one need look no further for a pre-Christian source than the Epic of Gilgamesh, written in 2600 BC. This story talks of a great flood commanded by God, an ark with saved animals upon it, and even the release and return of a dove, all held in common with the biblical story, the plagiarized story of Moses. Upon Moses' birth, it is said that he was placed in a reed basket and set adrift in a river in order to avoid infanticide. He was later rescued by a daughter of royalty and raised by her as a prince. This baby in a basket story was lifted directly from the myth of Sargon the river. He was in turn rescued and raised by Aki, or royal midwife. Furthermore, Moses is known as the lawgiver, the giver of the Ten Commandments, the Mosaic Law. However, the idea of a law being passed from God to a prophet up on a mountain is also very old motif. Moses is just another lawgiver along the line of lawgivers in mythological history. In India, Manu was the great lawgiver. In Crete, Munimus ascended Mount Dicta, where Zeus gave him the sacred laws. While in Egypt, there was Meses, who carried stone tablets, and upon them the laws of God were written. Manu, Minos, Meses, and the dead. What the Book of the Dead phrased, "I have not stolen," became "Thou shalt not steal." "I have not killed," became "Thou shalt not kill." "I have not told lies," became "Thou shalt not bear false witness," and so forth. In fact, the afterlife, final judgment, virgin birth, death and resurrection, crucifixion, the Ark of the Covenant, and many. Justin Martyr, one of the first Christian historians and defenders, wrote, "When we say that he, Jesus Christ, our teacher, was produced without sexual union, was crucified and died and rose again, and ascended into heaven, we propound nothing different from what you believe regarding those who you esteem sons of Jupiter." In a different writing, Justin Martyr said, "He was born of a virgin." However, Justin had a solution. As far as he was concerned, the devil did it. The devil had the foresight to come before Christ and create his characteristics in a world.
Fundamentalist Christianity, fascinating. These people actually believe the world. Okay, dinosaur fossils. He says, dinosaur fossils? God put those here to test our faith.
An astro-theological literary hybrid, just like nearly all religions was born in miracle birth. Joseph was of 12 brothers. Jesus had 12 disciples. Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver. Jesus was sold for 30 pieces of silver. Brother Judah suggests the sale of Joseph, disciple to 30. The parallels go on and on. Furthermore, is there any non-biblical historical evidence of any person living with the name Jesus, the son of Mary, who traveled about with 12 followers, healing people, and the like? There are numerous historians who lived in and around the Mediterranean, either during or soon after. However, to be fair, that doesn't mean defenders of the historical Jesus haven't claimed the contrary. 4 historians are typically referenced to justify Jesus' existence. Pliny the Younger, Suetonius, and Tacitus are the first 3. Each one of their entries consists of only a few sentences at best, and only refer to Christus or the Christ. which in fact is not a name but a title. It means the anointed one. The fourth source is Josephus, and this source has been proven to be a forgery for hundreds of years. Sadly, it is still cited as truth. In heaven for all eyes to see, and performing wealth of miracles acclaimed him, would have made it in the historical record. It did not even exist.
We don't want to be unkind, but we want to be factual. We don't want to cause hurt feelings, but we want to be academically correct in what we understand and know to be true. Christianity just is not based on truth. We find that Christianity was in fact nothing more than a Roman story, developed politically.
The reality is, Jesus was the solar deity of the Gnostic Christian sect. And like all other pagan gods, he was a mythical figure. It was the political It was during this meeting that the politically motivated Christian doctrines were established, and thus began a long history of religious bloodshed and spiritual fraud. And for over the next 1,000 years, the Vatican maintained a political stranglehold on all of Europe, leading to such joyous periods as the Dark Ages, along with enlightening events such as the Crusades and the Inquisition. Christianity alone served to detach the species from the natural world, and likewise each other. They support blind submission to authority. They reduce awful crimes can be justified in the name of a divine pursuit. And, most critically, it empowers the political establishment who have been using the myth to manipulate and control societies. The religious myth is one of the most powerful devices ever created, and it serves as the psychological soil upon which other myths can flourish.
A myth is an idea that, while widely believed, is false. Orienting and mobilizing story toward people. The focus is not on the story's relation to reality, but on its function. A story cannot function unless it is believed to be true in the community or the nation. It is not a matter of debate. If some people have the bad taste to raise the question of the truth of the sacred story, the keepers of the faith do not enter into debate with them. They ignore them or denounce them as blasphemous. It is wrong, blasphemous, and sinful for you to suggest in specific.
Watched the building be demolished on purpose. If you're going to do this, you have to get at the under infrastructure of the building and bring it down.
The way the structure is collapsing, this was the result of something that was planned. It's not accidental that the first tower just happened to collapse and then the second tower just happened to collapse.
You don't find a desk. You don't find found. It was half of the keypad, and it was about this big.
What happened? The concrete was pulverized from river to river. There was dust powder 2 inches thick. The concrete was just pulverized.
Demolition was actually watching too much of television before. I've been on the looking at sure like well placed down, I can knock it down.
I've heard a 10-second explosion.
Those are an explosion felt like gunfire. Bang, 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 bang. And then all of a sudden, big explosion. We heard a big explosion coming down.
And then the entire top of the building just blew up.
We saw some kind of power, actually devices that were planted in the building. Planted in the building.
Our government, at least. I don't think the prior government could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
No specific threat involving really domestic operation or involving what happened on its way around the city's airliners.
There were no warning signs that I'm aware of.
USA Today reports that in the 2 years before the attacks on September the 11th, NORAD conducted exercises using hijacked airliners as weapons. And one target was the World Trade Center.
In confidential documents from the Philippines obtained by CNN, the plan was clear. He would board any American commercial aircraft, control its cockpit, and dive it at the CIA headquarters. Other buildings targeted the Pentagon and the World Trade Center.
The Federal Aviation Administration received and did not apparently heed the
Intelligence unit known as Able Danger.
and it identified Mohammed Atta and 3 other 9/11 terrorists as members of an Al-Qaeda cell in Brooklyn, New York, more than a year before the attacks.
And we found 2 to 3 cells which conducted 9/11 attacks.
Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer, who was the first member of Able Danger to go public, has now been told in writing by the Defense Intelligence Agency that he can't speak to members of Congress or their staff without prior approval.
This is an attempt to prevent the American people from knowing the facts about how we could have prevented 9/11.
Terrorism was blinking red, in the words of George Tenet, that the warnings of an imminent attack were so severe that something dramatic should have been done. It was unparalleled.
The head of Pakistani intelligence of the ISI, Mahmoud Ahmed, requested Omar Sheikh to wire $100,000 to Mohammed Atta, who was the lead hijacker.
The hijacker Mohammed Atta received wire transfers via Pakistan. The man sending the money to Atta is believed to be Atta. As hard as this is to believe that two of the alleged terrorists involved in what happened on Tuesday may have attended schools run by the U.S. military.
Evidence was also apparently planted. The passport of one of the hijackers on Flight 11 was allegedly found in the building.
The hijacker's passport was found blocked from the World Trade Center tracks. I can believe that.
The 9/11 hijackers are alive and well. That's according to the chief of the Chinese Democratic Party, who says 9/11 is a hoax.
Several of these 19 Marines are still alive.
Of course, we're after Saddam Hussein. Bin Laden. He's
In the early 1980s, bin Laden worked with operatives from U.S. intelligence, the Pakistani military, and Arab states. January 2001, the Bush administration orders the FBI and intelligence agencies to back off investigations involving the bin Laden family, including 2 of Osama bin Laden's relatives, who were living, guess where, in Falls Church, Virginia, right next to CIA headquarters. But he was already America's most wanted criminal. He reportedly spent 2 weeks in the American hospital in Dubai, was treated by an American doctor, and visited by the local CIA agent.
We have not seen one piece of evidence that links Osama bin Laden directly.
Video allegedly found in Afghanistan admitted responsibility for the attacks.
6, Osama's older brother Salim bin Laden and family. Jim Bath also happens to be a personal, almost lifelong friend and former Air National Guard pilot, which was much more clear when George Herbert Walker Bush made trips to Saudi Arabia in 1990, a company called the Carlyle Group.
How could anyone fly a 60-ton, 125-foot wide, 44-foot tall
Small plane.
No luggage, no bottles, nothing but bricks and limestone.
The official explanation is that the intense heat from the jet fuel vaporized the entire plane. Flight 77 had 2 Rolls-Royce engines made of steel and titanium alloy and weigh 6 tons each. It is scientifically impossible that 12 tons of steel and titanium was vaporized by jet fuel.
We're also told that the bodies were able to be vaporized.
There's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon, and as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough.
Rated off. The entire lawn was covered with dirt and gravel, so that any remaining forensic evidence was literally covered up. The videos from security cameras, which would show what really hit the Pentagon, were immediately confiscated and released them. If these videos would prove that the Pentagon was really hit by a 757, most of us would assume the government would have released them.
It looks like there's no big mountain here and some broken trees. We can see some people walking around in the area, but from where we could see, there wasn't much left. Any large pieces of debris at all? No, there was nothing that you could distinguish that a plane had crashed on. The FBI and the state police here have confirmed that they have cordoned off the second area about 6 miles away. Could it have blown that far away? Seems highly unlikely.
Pancake theory, according to which the fires, while not melting the steel, heated it up sufficiently to cause the floors weakened by the airplane strikes
Piled up on top of each other, and then a spindle of core columns standing too.
The Twin Towers consisted of 47 massive steel columns. If the floors had broken loose from them, these columns would have still been sticking up into the air 1,000 feet.
7, hitting the building at any location.
The building probably could sustain multiple impacts of jetliners.
And the plane flew straight into the building. So you're saying that the building was actually designed to cope with a hole like that, and
Right.
it still survive?
If you had dropped, say, a billiard ball from the top of the World Trade Center, 110 floors up there, it would have taken 8 to 10 seconds to hit the ground, encountering no resistance whatsoever.
The Twin Towers came down at nearly ball speed. 200,000 tons of steel shatters and explodes outwards over 500 feet.
And this means that floor.
There is no scenario for a pancake effect of buildings falling that allows
Explosives. The columns going up the core, they're interconnected. How do you get them to fail simultaneously so the core disappears? It looks like those core columns were cut.
The way we do this is by cutting the beam at an angle.
I started looking at the molten metal. All 3 buildings, pools of molten metal.
Like you're in a foundry. Wow.
The molten steel was found 3, 4, and 5 weeks later.
Listen to the official reports. What do they say about the molten metal? They say nothing. Wait.
This is important evidence. Where did that come from? Thermite is so hot and just cut through steel, through structural steel, for example, but and right through butter. The products are molten iron, aluminum oxide, which goes off primarily as a dust. You know, those enormous dust clouds, you can imagine when you assemble these chemicals on large scale.
Professor Niels Harrit, you examined the rubble that came from the World Trade Center. What did you find in it?
Well, in there we find remains of what we characterize as a thermitic material. And this is a very energetic material which can be used either for melting iron or it can be designed as an explosive. Molten iron was in pools of molten iron in the rubble, and then what happens is the thermite came done reaction. This was the bitch's brew of thermite chemistry.
Molten metal pools, and yeah.
Part of the problem is that most people simply don't know much about building 7 due to the extraordinary secrecy surrounding this collapse.
This was a 47-story skyscraper. This building fell at 5:25.
It was not hit by a plane. This building had fires on only 2 or 3 floors.
In the middle, and then that building just went straight down, almost at free fall speed.
Our office was on the B1 level. As I was talking to a supervisor at 8:46, and all of a sudden we hear, boom! An explosion so hard that pushed us upwards. And it came from the basement between the B2 level and the B3 level. And when I went to verbalize it, we hear, boom! The impact of the plane on top.
It would appear to me as if there's more smoke coming from the ground. I was down in the basement, came down, all of a sudden the elevator
Coming out, we passed the lobby, there was no lobby. So I believe the bomb hit the lobby first. And a couple of seconds in the first plane hit.
as I'm walking by the main freight car in the corridor. That's when I got blown. I mean, and all the ceiling tile was falling down, the light fixtures were falling. You know, you got to go clear across the whole from one to 2 World Trades. Even in everything that was going on. I mean, I know people that got killed in the basement. I know people that got broken legs in the basement. People that got reconstructive surgery because the wall hit them in the face.
According to standard operating procedure, is an FAA flight control notices anything that suggests possible hijacks of NORAD, North American Aerospace Command, to send up or scramble jet fighters to find out what is going on. NORAD then issues the scramble order to the nearest Air Force base, fighters on alert. But although interceptions usually occur within 10 or so minutes, in this case, 80 or so minutes had elapsed before fighters were even airborne.
It's a mind-bending anomaly. Not a single U.S. Air Force interceptor turns a wheel until it's too late. There are no jets at all.
What if they were so confused and had been so deliberately confused that they couldn't respond? The reason that they didn't know where to go was because a number of conflicting and overlapping war game exercises were taking place that involved the insertion of false radar blips onto radar screens in the Northeast Air Defense Center.
17, we have a problem here. We have a hijacked aircraft just towards New York. We need some of its members to the 16. There's something up the south.
Is this real world or exercises?
There was another exercise, Vigilant Warrior, which was in fact, according to a NORAD source, a live fly hijack drill being conducted at the same time. With only 8 available fighter aircraft, and they have to be dispatched in pairs, They were dealing with as many as 22 possible hijacks on the day of 9/11, and they couldn't separate the being exercise hijacks. Page 172. The U.S. government has not been able to determine the origin of the money used for the 9/11 attacks. Ultimately, the question is of little practical significance.
The American authorities have not managed to trace the source of the funding, and then the most amazingly disingenuous statement, ultimately, is it of little consequence. It is of massive consequence.
Doesn't it matter who paid for 9/11? The collapse of Building 7 has been recognized as especially difficult to explain. The 9/11 Commission report implicitly admitted that it could not explain the collapse of this building by not even mentioning it.
President, why are you and the Vice President insisting on appearing together before the 9/11 Commission?
Because the 9/11 Commission wants to ask us questions. That's why we're meeting, and I look forward to meeting with them and answering their questions.
Why you're appearing together rather than separately, which was their request?
Because it's a good chance for both of us to answer questions that the 9/11 Commission is looking forward to asking us, and I'm looking forward to answering them. Let's see.
Do you think they should be able to stand up?
A transcript, or to be able to see what you
They
said.
asked me that question yesterday. I got the same answer, yeah.
The final report was a unanimous report. That means that there was a single commissioner who had any objection about anything. That fact would be dropped from the report.
We have found out that he not only served on the transition team of the Bush administration, that he was a person who wrote the draft license. We want him to resign.
There's literally nothing in the 9/11 report that the Bush administration does not approve.
We can understand, therefore, why the Commission, under Zeitgeist leadership, would have ignored all the evidence that would point to the truth. That 9/11 was a false flag operation intended to authorize the doctrines and funds needed for a new level of imperial mobilization.
Armed with knives, armed with chemical, biological, nuclear weapons. Fanatics, terror, September 11th. September 11th, killer, September 11th, terrorists, Al-Qaeda, terror, nuclear weapons, terror. 9/11, terror, evil. September 11th, terrorism, war and danger. September 11th, terrorism, global terrorism, 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 terrorism. September 11th, global terrorism, terrorism. September 11th, world terrorism, terrorism. September 11th, global terrorism. September the 11th, terror. Weapons of mass destruction. September the 11th, terrorism. Evil terrorists.
And of course, believed to be linked to Al-Qaeda. But it's the so-called war on terrorism that's in our faces practically 24/7 as the inescapable focus of our existence.
One day, our grandchildren will look back on this time and ask, how was the war on terror won? The entire U.S. ruling class, ruling elite, comes to see terrorism as the preferred means, indeed the only means, to provide social cohesion, in order to have a society. It's a very dangerous thing, because now it means that the entire social order, the political parties, intellectual lives, and myth,
Look, the CIA has done in this country, what they've done to us is unbelievable. Look at the terrorist acts that have occurred. The CIA behind most, if not all of it. We had the Marine barracks, their embassy in Kenya. We had Pan Am, 103. We had the USS Cole. We had Oklahoma City. We had the World Trade Center in 1993.
Man that helped the terrorists blow up the World Trade Center the first time. They got the bomb. They got the driver's license.
The informant, the informant, fellow named Salam, a 43-year-old former Egyptian army officer, he was given the assignment to put the bomb together. And he went to the supervisor, this FBI supervisor, and said, we're going to put a dummy bomb in here, right? And the FBI supervisor said, no, we're going to put a real bomb.
FBI agents might have been able to prevent February's deadly explosion at the New York's World Trade Center. They discussed secretly substituting harmless powder for the explosives, but they didn't, according to the FBI's own informant, Imad Salem. Unbeknownst to the FBI at the time, Salem recorded many of his conversations with his handlers.
Unfortunately for them, there were only 6 people killed, not enough to pass the legislation. So what happened is 2 years later, April 19, 1995, downtown Oklahoma City Murrah building, 168 similarly, is passed.
Yeah.
It was 9:30 this morning. We were actually running an exercise for the morning. So I stood up and there's in the back of my neck, standing upright.
To get this quite straight, you were running.
Supposed to believe in some kind of coincidence, there was also an anti-terrorist drill going on 7/7. And again, just like 9/11, they were talking about attacks on the same target, the same kind of tube stations, at exactly the same time as the actual attack happened, providing some kind of cover for what must be operations orchestrated in some way by the state.
I am absolutely appalled to understand that a guy out there up in the mountains financed the most elaborate attack on this country. And when I think about how many Americans were killed in New York City and believing as I do that Nazis used, and they've used it over and over again, America has been suckered in one more time.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street. There's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that is like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house and slow rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV, my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crying and the stick. All I know is that first, you've got to get...
When hostilities commenced in Europe in 1939, it was realized that the American people had no intention of entering the war. They believed that this country could be enticed into the war in very much the same way that it was enticed into the last one. They planned, first, to prepare the United States for foreign war under the guise of American defense. Second, to involve us in the war step by step without our realization. Third, to create a series of incidents which would force us into the actual power of their propaganda. Our theaters soon became filled with plays portraying the glory of war. Newsreels lost all semblance of objectivity, and they have used the war to justify the restriction of congressional power and the assumption of dictatorial procedures on the part of the president and his appointees. A fear campaign was inaugurated. We cannot allow the natural passions and prejudices of other peoples to lead our country to destruction.
In 1775, the American Revolutionary War began as the American colonists sought to detach from England and its oppressive monarchy.